It's time for Twig. This week in Google, a great cast for you. Brad Stone from the New York Times talks about Apple's rejection of Pulse. Malik from GigaOM is here. Gina Trapani and Jeff Jarvis driving in a car. It's all coming up. Actually, he wasn't driving. He was riding. This week in Google is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for This Week in Google is provided by Cachefly. CACHEFLY.com. This is Twig, This Week in Google, episode 46, recorded June 9th, 2010. Driving Mr. Jarvis. This Week in Google is brought to you by Slingbox. Watch your favorite TV shows when you're away from home with Slingbox. Check out Slingbox at a Best Buy near you or visit slingbox.com/twit. And by GoToMeeting. Face-to-face meetings are sometimes important, but they can be a hassle and a waste of money. Do more, travel less with GoToMeeting. For your free 30-day trial, visit gotomeeting.com/twig. It's time for Twig, This Week in Google, the show that covers Google and the Googleverse and the cloud, and a great cast of characters with us today. In fact, I'm going to go to Jeff Jarvis right away because he's actually in a car. This is the first time anybody has done any show on the network from a moving vehicle. Jeff Jarvis, you are
first.
You're a man of many talents.
He's a trailblazer.
A trailblazer. We thought Jeff wasn't going to be on the show because he's just getting back from South Africa, but I'm really pleased we can get you on, Jeff. We also have Gina Trapani from her lair in San Diego.
Hello.
The bicycle shop.
The bicycle shop, right? I got my bikes on the wall.
Gina's the blogger at originally Lifehacker, now smarterware.org, and joins us every week. And two special guests just for this occasion, GigaOM's own Malik. Hey, Gig. Hey, I almost called you Gig. Hey, Hey, Gig, what's happening?
Your friends call you Gig?
No, my enemies do.
We're great to have you, on the show.
On live TV.
I can't believe, I thought we'd had you on This Week in Google before, but you've been on TWiT, but not This Week in Google, so it's perfect timing to have you on.
You can only have two bloggers at a time on a show, to be very honest.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, Gina and Jeff. Everybody else has to take a back seat.
It's all bloggers all the time. In fact, even though Brad Stone is a reporter for the New York Times, he's also a blogger at their Bits blog, and we're glad to have you on, Brad. You just wrote the story, a very interesting story about Apple's rejection of Pulse, which I'm still using on my iPad, at the behest of the New York Times. Now, we should say you're not speaking for the Times here.
Oh, I'm back.
Yep, he's back. For some reason, we have trouble with the firewall in the Times building, I think. Are you there?
Trying to keep you guys out. I am here.
Oh, good.
I can hear you now, Leo.
So, now I was just saying, you're not speaking for the New York Times. You're as a reporter for the New York Times. You wrote the story on Apple and Pulse. What happened there?
That's right. Oh, it was sort of peculiar. About a week ago, I spotted this application in the in the iTunes store, in the App Store for the iPad, and it's a pretty good news aggregator. And of course, I wrote it up, and I talked to the Stanford Institute of Design students who had created it, and I got some indication from some of my colleagues that the Times actually frowned on these kinds of apps. And I mean, look, I don't speak for the New York Times. I'll get in trouble if I try to speak for the New York Times. I tried to cover that story yesterday like everybody else.
Right.
My perception is that the main objection is, news organization like the Times is trying to have a website on one hand and an app on the other, and we're trying to do different things, and we might ultimately try to do different things economically with those properties.
Right.
And Pulse just goes and very creatively links the two. It's taking our website, it's presenting it within its app, and it's bracketing our website with its own content, its own application. And I think that's where some of the discomfort was created, and you guys know the rest.
I think the New York Times Editor's Choice is actually a very nice way to read the New York Times. But
it's limited. It's a very first step in there. With it. Yeah, it's not all the content, and I think it's because we're waiting for the paywall and for the rest of the strategy to kind of come along. I'm curious like everybody else.
I'm sorry that Jeff is just going in from the car to his house right now because I would love to get his.
The person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable. Please.
Well, at least we got him on for a little bit. We'll get him back once he gets inside the house.
I'm sure Jeff will have an opinion on that.
Well, you know, he's against these paywalls, and he thinks it's crazy to do this. And it was Virginia Heffernan, I thought, who kind of astutely, we talked about this last week, wrote in the Times, Sunday Times a couple of weeks ago about how these apps are really the suburbs compared to the inner city of the World Wide Web with all of its rough and tumble elements.
Hey, Leo, sorry to interrupt there. You know, this whole episode reminds me of this quote by Mahatma Gandhi, which he's somewhat like, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. And I think that's exactly what is going on. I don't think, I'm not talking about Brad here, but I think the New York Times can't seem to, and like many of the large institutions in this world, can't seem to understand that we live in a society of where things are going around the people who are creating blocks in whatever they do, whether they are the big banks, the government, the media, whatever it is, there is a route around mentality which has become pervasive in a whole generation of people who've been empowered with the internet, right? And I think what you're seeing is this fighting the news aggregators. I mean, really, can you really fight that? Like, it's like saying some kids basically, clip New York Times and create like a short version of it and Xerox it and give it to their friends. I mean, how is that different, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure how Pulse is different from a ton of other news aggregators, which I use.
I mean, I think this is, and the fact is that the world is very different, right? I think, and the bigger issue, which I think, Jeff can address too, given that he spends a lot of his time in the media world and the new post-internet media world, I think we don't seem to quite understand the harsh reality of our businesses, the media industry, is that we are looking to redefine the future with the rules of yesterday. With ideas from yesterday. That's not going to happen. Like there are some truisms, right? Like as Clay Shirky and Jay Rosen say, that the value of content isn't going to go away. A New York Times story is not going to go away. But one needs to think differently about what is information and what is insight and what is a newspaper and how it needs to be delivered. I think looking at ideas which are from yesterday and saying, I am going to deliver it to the world in that manner, it's not going to work. It just is not.
Let me raise one. I agree with you, Owen. But
and by the way, it's not just the newspaper industry; it's the music industry, the television industry. I mean, it's every content company right now. That
it seems to me that there's a sort of simple issue here. Apple itself has created or really nurtured this distinction of applications.
You're right.
Applications are not the wide world of the web. They're a curated entertainment or content experience. And, it seems like what the New York Times is trying to do here is to preserve that, that possibility that it can have, that it can create a differentiated experience on its own, and then possibly that experience might be worth something to some of our our fans. I mean, what Pulse was doing was sort of blending the two categories, was taking the wide world of the web and bringing it into their own app experience.
Was it because Pulse was not free? Was that some of the issue?
I mean, as I said before, I felt part of the company's response to it was muddled.
Right.
So I'm not sure how much that made a difference.
Jeff, what's your take on this? I mean, you unfortunately, we lost Jeff right in the middle of this conversation. We're talking about the iPad application Pulse News, which was written by a group of Stanford students, was in fact shown by Steve Jobs on the stage at the WWDC on Monday, and on Tuesday pulled by Apple from the App Store because of complaints from the New York Times. And I should underscore again that Brad works for the New York Times, is not speaking for the New York Times, he's speaking as a reporter.
And I did ping Martin dissidents from the Times, but I was about to get on a plane from South Africa, so I couldn't go any farther with him. I just don't see how you cannot want to be part of something like Pulse that's good, that's going to send readers. And I had this discussion with a reporter at the LA Times who just put up a story about the Las Vegas Sun suing people like a cat blogger for putting up a whole story. People shouldn't put up whole stories, but this was a poor cat blogger who put up one story once, and now they're selling the copyright to someone else to sue.
My
point is that I don't think we've studied yet the real value of the different kinds of links that we have. I know that I put up my entire column in my entire blog, rather, listen to me, in RSS. I've had it up on Business Insider, and I've had it up elsewhere, and I get more traffic and more results as it is. I think that it was in the New York Times 2 years ago that a college student said, if the news is that important, it will find me. We cannot be so hubristic to think that people will always come to us as if our brands are magnetic. And so I think that the Times has to figure out how to be part of this distributed world. It has an RSS feed. It has an API. It needs to be part of experiences all over. And Brad, I think you're right that editors want to create this experience, but I think the problem there is it's not the experience, it's the ego of control.
Actually, can I interrupt you, Jeff, for 1 minute here? So a couple of points, if you really think about it. So about 26% of NewYorkTimes.com traffic comes from sources not New York Times, okay? Google, Facebook, Drudge Report, things like that. So it behooves them to actually encourage people to actually link to them and take their information in many different places. So Pulse is a good example of that. And the second example of it is that if you really think about it, is it New York Times' fault? Perhaps not. I will step back and take whose fault is it that this kind of thinking has become all pervasive. And I think a lot of it is the fault of Madison Avenue, because they don't innovate around the idea of advertising. And basically, they have imposed this idea that everything has to be page view or eyeball driven. And those eyeballs have to have the metrics which they've used traditionally. And I think this is why companies like New York Times are also reacting towards, the guys like Pulse and saying, okay, we don't need to, help these guys out. And I think a lot of it is the fault of the business model. And the business model, I would say we need to take it all the way back to Madison Avenue. I think it's a whole cause and an effect. It's not just New York Times banning the Pulse. I mean, it's the whole ecosystem has to it needs a futuristic, forward-looking, brand new thinking.
Go to newsinnovation.com, and we did a lot of work on this at CUNY. I agree that we need new models. I think this response here, rather than taking down the app, I wish that Apple had notified Pulse, and Pulse had pulled down the New York Times.
That may be, by the way, what has happened, because it's still on the App Store. Went down, then went back up. It's nobody knows why it's back up. If that's an error.
Well, one change that they made,
New York Times players, they've done this before, had contact. Brad, did they contact the application at all first before sending the cease and desist letter? Was there any contact from the New York Times to Pulse?
I don't know.
Yeah.
My understanding was we sent a lawyer to Apple. Sent a letter to Apple.
Letter to Apple, yeah. So that's a shame too. I think, and the Times has done this in the past, where the executives at the Times are forward thinking. I know a lot of them, but a lawyer gets in the way, and it hurts the brand. It hurts the Times.
Here's the question: Ohm, do you do a full text feed of GigaOhm in
Absolutely.
your RSS? You do.
Yes, I do.
As do I.
Gina, and you do a full text feed, right?
I do a full text feed of my personal site. Lifehacker stopped doing a full text feed, which was something that I thought was a terrible, terrible idea, and I was pretty vocal about it, as was Adam Pash, who's the current lead editor. But that was a change.
So most forward-thinking modern properties do full text feeds in their RSS. You can subscribe to it in something like NetNewsWire, Google Reader, and see the entire content.
This is the thing. Like, as a developer.
Hold on a second. Jeff, Guardian did it and their traffic went up?
Guardian put up full text about a year ago and found their traffic never went down as a result.
Traffic went down. Okay.
Or did not go down.
Or didn't go down. Okay.
Did not go down.
Go ahead, Gina. I'm sorry.
As a developer, I may be getting hung up on an irrelevant technical detail, but what Pulse does is just embeds the WebKit engine into a new window. It is essentially another browser. So it would be as if Opera charged $3.99 to download and install, just a web browser. And the Times was saying you can't look at our content in a web browser. I don't understand.
It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
It doesn't make sense. Technically, the Pulse window, Pulse isn't wrapping it in it's a web browser. It's just a window that runs WebKit just the same way that mobile Safari does. The reason why they do it that way is that they don't want the user to have to launch Safari and leave Pulse, right? Because because the iPhone didn't, or the iPad doesn't really do, well, it didn't do multitasking really at the time.
Right.
So I don't understand, what the argument could be against selling, what's essentially a web browser. I mean, it sounds like the Times problem was that it was using the Times brand to sell Pulse, the app, but I'm not sure, and I won't.
They
put that
did,
on the spot.
and then maybe that's all it was. They did in the App Store have a screen cap of the Times. So
And it was one of the default.
It's in. I have the
sites.
default feeds, and that's what's in here, along with Delicious and.
I know a lot of sites.
And by the way,
that would
Buzz
be
Machine.
thrilled.
Yeah.
A lot of sites would be thrilled to have that kind of placement.
No, I say it's simple. Pulse should drop the Times. Period. Don't want to play? Fine. Don't play, and let's see who wishes for it.
Well, now, by the way, Pulse is a newsreader. I can. It'll sync with my Google Reader. So if I have the New York Times, as I do, I have all of your feeds in here. All of the New York Times feeds in here. It'll just show up right again. I mean, I guess they could block it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's and maybe if you pose that question to the Times, well, would you like us to block it? I wonder what their answer would be.
The Times can block it. The Times can, in their robots.txt, can block it if they don't like the client.
Well, that's true.
Well, it's an RSS feed, though, Gina, isn't it? So isn't that different? Does RSS have a robots.txt?
Yeah, you can use robots.txt to block access to any type of file. So an RSS file is just an XML file, and you can say the Pulse client don't deliver this XML file to the Pulse client.
As long as Pulse honors it.
Right, as long as Pulse is sending its user agent, being honest about who it is, saying I'm the Pulse agent, which I'm sure that it is. Any well-behaved client does that, then the Times can say don't serve these feeds to this agent. That seems really weird, though. I mean, that would be like the Times saying, no newsreader should be able to grab our RSS feed and use it. It's just that it would be
stupid season
bizarre.
in newspapers. The panic is leading to efforts to circle the wagons, the phrase I used about the Federal Trade Commission, and it's really too bad. And again, I'm not sure this happens in every quarter of every company, but I think somewhere in some quarter somebody says, get the bastards, and doesn't realize that they're not thieving, they're giving a great gift of audience.
I think panic's a good
I'm
word.
happy to read the BBC and the Guardian and the Telegraph and the Washington Post and other things in Pulse, if I only had an iPad.
Panic's a good word. It seems like scared a little bit, right?
I don't want to be put in the position of defending my employer.
Brad is not speaking for the New York Times, ladies and gentlemen.
I feel like there was something that was carefully considered here, and this may be futile, but the Times, like a lot of other news organizations, is developing along two tracks. There's the website, and then there's the more curated, more media-rich, more user-friendly app experience, and it's trying to control that distinction, and Pulse really muddies it, and that bottom line is what Gina put her finger on. It's either it's opening up the web browser within the app, or it's doing what every other app does, what every Twitter app does, which is generating that Safari window outside, so that the user is not confused. They are going to the web.
The user's not. Brad, I understand your position here, and it's a delicate one, and I really appreciate you being here because I know how difficult it is. So I'm not trying to argue with you, but the users aren't dumb. And the problem is that I've worked with designers for years and editors who want to control this experience, and that's part of the problem. I just had a back and forth with Chris Anderson, the editor of Wired, let's repeat, Wired magazine, who bragged on Twitter, and I quote, about a third of Wired mag content is now iPad and print only, not web. And I responded, and you're bragging about this? Why? This is Wired. Wired.
Right.
They're saying that the web is passé.
You're saying that this is kind of swimming upstream, that everybody can use a browser now to do it, and nobody would, in their right mind, well, I guess Rupert Murdoch would, put up a paywall against a browser. I think the Times is doing some interesting things. You have now, I was taking an interactive test on the Times webpage yesterday. There's some stuff going on. You've resurrected. You've got a new text section.
I think the most important thing the Times has done, and I'm not saying this to suck up to you, Brad, I'd say it if you weren't here, is in fact Bits and blogs like it.
I love Bits.
That has brought an entirely new voice to even the print New York Times that I never thought would happen.
And is this the inside technology? Is that the new thing that you're doing? Isn't there a new section, Brad, in the Times now?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. We do a podcast every week, and no, I mean this is as Ohm knows, we're multi-platform now, and we're doing the blog, and the blog gets we do a roundup for the paper, we do stories for the web that make it into the paper, and then vice versa, and the distinctions are all blurred. That what you're showing now is just our tech vertical page, and so that's where we kind of aggregate all the content.
Right. But you've got personal tech, you've got inside technology, you've got videos, you've got interactive tests and things. I took a test yesterday on my attention span in the Times site.
Not bad, was it, Leo?
Bad. Well, actually, you know what? I didn't finish it. I got distracted. I'm not kidding. I got through a couple of them. It was too much work. Yeah, it was too much work. But I think that's very interesting. And what I really think is interesting is that you canned the circuit section in the print newspaper, and I think it's reasonable because people like me who want tech information are much more likely to go to a website like this and read this on the web than we are.
That goes to Ohm's point, though. That was killed not for editorial reasons or audience reasons, but advertising reasons.
I think the interesting conversation. First of all, I can understand two things about New York Times. First of all, it is not for only us early adopters, so we have to be careful as to just tarring them entirely. So they have a big platform which caters to a lot of different markets, so they have their own issues. Secondly, I think there many people in their management are quite aware of the severity of the situation as far as news industry is concerned and how they need to reinvent it. With that said, I think the biggest problem I see, not just with them, but with most media companies, is that they keep looking backwards to go forward. And that's not how you walk. You look backwards, you're going to run into a pole. That just is common sense. And the second thing you really have to realize, so there's a lot of talk about building paid products and, putting firewalls. And, we have a paid product. It's called GigaOM Research. It's not a product we've been giving away for free for so many years. You can't get up one day and say, I'm going to charge for this product which I've been giving away for so many decades, because people are not going to deal with that. Instead, you figure out new things people will pay for. It will be a smaller business. It will be a subset of your audience. You need to be very, very creative how you make money. I think that's the big difference people are not coming to terms with. And I think it is just amazing to see everybody. I mean, these are the guys I look up to when I think about building a company. A media company is traditional media giants, and they're still not, embracing today's reality. People will only pay for new things or different things they think have value. They can put an actual return on investment value on some kind of content they will pay for. I think that's the big difference. I mean, I don't know, I'm ranting a little bit, but...
No, and this is a conversation we love to talk about. We're going to take a break, come back. Brad did write an article about antitrust and Google. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Of course, Apple had its WWDC, and Steve did use the G word. In fact, surprisingly responded a little bit to Google's attacks at Google I.O. We'll talk about that, and iPhone 4 versus Android. And I'll be interested to see how many of the panelists who are currently using Android phones may be thinking of an iPhone. But before we do that, I'd like to welcome a new sponsor to the show, Slingbox. We're very glad to have Slingbox here. In fact, I've been using Slingbox for ages. It's a great way to watch your favorite TV shows when you're away from home. Slingbox is very simple to set up. In fact, if you go right now to Best Buy or slingbox.com/twit, you could pick up a Slingbox, bring it home, attach it to your TV system, and that includes your DVR, your DVD, your cable, your satellite, whatever it is, all the stuff, in fact, not just one, but it's got many connections that you use. Connect that Slingbox to the internet, and done. You're ready to go. You're ready to, literally leave the house, because Slingbox lets you now watch your local television anywhere you can get online, with a Mac, with a PC, with an iPod Touch connected via Wi-Fi, with an iPhone, soon with other devices which shall remain nameless. But you can
Leo,
imagine.
I have a question about the Slingbox.
Yeah.
If I set up a Slingbox in my New York apartment with my sister, I could watch shows 3 hours early on the West Coast.
You could watch the Robin Bird show anytime you wanted. I know that's what you want.
I've been thinking about it.
You could see Glee at 6 p.m. San Diego time.
Glee at 6 p.m. Glee at dinner. That's what I want. I need a Slingbox. That's it. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I want to set it up at
absolutely. You know, here's a crazy use. You can watch TV in your own house as you wander around through the internet in your house. I can't wait. I believe there's an iPad version in beta, and this will be so cool to be able to say, "This is my TV. Anywhere I go, I can watch my Slingbox." I can already do that on my iPhone and my iPod Touch. I mean, it really is very, very cool.
Of course, if you're doing that over 3G, the new AT&T data limits.
We'll get to that.
Wah, wah.
just annoying as heck. Well, but then just go out and get a MiFi or something. You know, use Verizon. There's ways. There's ways and ways. Go to Sling.
I was thinking about that today. I think that becomes, if you can get an unlimited MiFi, then you just go pure data and get rid of everything else, right?
Right. Why not? In fact,
you can watch
right now
on your phone or on your iPad or anything you want.
The three of us, Gina, Jeff, and I, can use 2.2, Android 2.2, and use T-Mobile unlimited. I mean, maybe.
Just to be clear, Leo, there is no such thing as unlimited.
I know. It's 5 gigabytes unlimited.
5 gigabytes. And
Sprint had real unlimited for a while, like unlimited. And then somebody yelled at them. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Slingbox.com/twit. Believe me, 5 gigabytes is plenty. And if you're, worried about missing the finals as you hit the road, or if, a great use for this would be in the ballpark or in the stadium, and get the instant replay you're watching. And everybody goes, "What happened? What happened?" Because Slingbox.com/twit. It is, this is the modern way to watch TV. Thank you, Slingbox, for your support of This Week in Google. Boy, what should we talk about? There's a lot to talk about. You want to talk about AT&T and bandwidth? Malik?
Oh, no, not that. I just want to know from you guys, what do you make of the caffeine upgrade from Google?
The new search. Mm-hmm. Now, Gina, I'm going to ask Gina this because I think of all, Jeff, you've been in South Africa. I'm an idiot. Gina, can you tell that this
Gina
search...
to the rescue.
Gina to the rescue. Is there a difference?
Yeah. I've been trying to figure out what's different. I'm not really sure what the details are, what the technical details are. The result is that it's just a lot faster and stuff shows up a lot faster. So search results get picked up quickly and get shown faster. I think they're throwing around big numbers like 50%. I honestly didn't do a whole lot of tests on my own.
They don't say faster. They say 50% fresher.
Oh, fresher.
What is that? What the hell does that mean?
So I guess that just means that, pages that go up, a blog post that goes up, shows up, in search results for, in Google search results a lot faster, closer to publish time. So new content that gets up.
In a way, they're moved towards real time.
Yes, that's what it seems like.
With caffeine, according to Information Week, Google crawls the web in smaller portions. That's what I've been trying to do in my diet. And updates the index on a continuous basis. So instead of churning, indexing, okay, now you have the results. It's doing it. It's turning it over faster and faster.
Isn't there's I think the underlying reality of this update is places like Twitter, right? They've actually changed how quickly information is consumed and disseminated. And I think Google is trying to keep up with this new, more current, web. And secondly, it also speaks to their single biggest strength, which is, I guess, my angle on this story is the infrastructure they have, this big giant network they own, millions of devices, servers they have, and how they use all that to their advantage. And I think this is a sign, by being able to crawl the web, index it, and spew it out for all of us to use in a more real-time fashion, is that guys at Bing, they don't have a freaking hope. I'm sorry. I mean, they just don't. They are trying to catch up with the car, which is going at 300 miles an hour, and they just started driving. And I think that's the big story here, is how they can do all this at such rapid speed is just amazing. It is the miracle of technology if you come to think of it.
So the now I am seeing, and when you see latest results for caffeine, for a long time that was Twitter and maybe Facebook, and now I see newspapers. Akira Daily News is in this real-time feed. So clearly they see real-time as more than just social media. They see real-time as even news results. That seems to me to be quite a bit of a change. And also I like this. They also recommend, maybe you were looking for nicotine, quinine, capsaicin, or theophylline.
Whoa.
Okay.
It seems like instead of, I mean, this really is the miracle of having so many terabytes of storage and CPU cycles behind them. I mean, so it seems like before the old index was just kind of like this stack, and these layers that would move up the stack over a course of like 2 weeks. A layer of the stack wouldn't get updated. But with caffeine, it's a constant cycle of iterative. Things get pushed through the cycle of index to results a lot faster and a lot more iteratively and short little bits. It's kind of like the difference between, back in the days of box software where updates would come out, a big update would come out and they'd ship the box out and it'd go on the shelves of your local store. But now with web apps, small changes, iteratively pushed, weekly, a couple times a week. That's generally, most active websites get updated very, very quickly, iteratively, and in small bites.
Here's buzzmachine.com updated 9 hours ago. Let's see what smarterware.org updated 1 minute ago, Gina. Well, you win.
Whoa, nice.
I was on a plane.
Hey!
Gina, I haven't posted anything since yesterday.
Giga let's see how fast Giga cached. Doesn't say. Let me see. New York Times. Let's see how fast. 3 minutes ago. Gina, you win.
Wow.
I'm not going to put Leoville is going to be, because I haven't updated it in 6 months. There's no reason for them to update it. That's for sure. Yeah, it doesn't.
There's something wrong with their algorithm then, because I don't post as often as BuzzMachine and GigaOM.
No, I don't. I was on a plane for 18 hours, so
it's just chance. We just hit it at the right time, I'm sure.
Work on your exponential back off, Google.
And here I was saying nice things about them. Okay.
Bastards.
Let me ask you some on the flip side of the equation. Enough of being nice to Google, right? That's it. Done.
Done.
I want to ask Brad this question, if possible. Brad, you've written a lot about how Twitter is changing people's search habits. Do you feel that we are actually at that point where Google is beginning to worry about this whole real-time data, real-time information, how we as society are beginning to consume it through Facebook and Twitter? Do you think they're increasingly worried and that's why they're increasing the speed of their index and the crawl and everything else?
You know what? It's interesting you should ask that. I have found the Google has integrated the content from Twitter into search results. Bing has taken a slightly different approach and still keeps it siloed. And I've actually been struck by how awkward the real-time results can look in a Google search results page. You're getting kind of the raw thoughts of people on Twitter, on whatever you're searching on. Ideally, Google's like looking at some of the more credible people and algorithmically, routing their thoughts in, but it's still kind of off. And I wonder if it's, and you guys can disagree with this, but if it might be a sort of a failed experiment, and that the richness of the real-time web is more to be found in like the links people are sharing. That Google can sort of mine that information to refine search results, but that the actual real-time content, maybe with examples like like news events, put those aside, but for most searches where real time's not really quite making a difference, and speed, although on things like the speed of an update of a web result's a great thing to have, and you can see why caffeine will be very valuable there. The actual real time content sort of isn't a great fit. What do you guys think about that?
I think you're onto something there. I think I wouldn't call it a failed experiment. I think that's going way too far. I think that there's a difference in expectation of what we see there, and Google needs to refine this. Leo, can I use my number of the week now?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right.
Just spit it out.
4.7 billion, which is the latest number for Bitly links.
Yeah, 4.7 billion a day. Is it a day? How?
No, a month.
A month. Okay.
4.7 billion clicks a month. Bitly. Google to publishers, not to all sites, but to publishers, 4 billion a month. Google News, 1 billion a month. Again, bit apples and kumquats, but still.
And most of those Bitly links are through Twitter, probably.
Right, they're through Twitter, and but the point is that doesn't include Facebook, doesn't include anything else. I think, Brad, you're way right. Is what we're seeing is the power of the human links and the human recommendations. I think could well, I'll say it, could eclipse the power of Google at some point. And so Google sees that, and Google's trying to figure out how to integrate that. And I think the only thing is they haven't figured out how to integrate it yet. So I think you're right. There's a slight disconnect of experiences because we're used to Google being more long-term, definitive, relevant, and here comes this live stuff. But I think it's just the beginning of figuring that out.
I think the other issue, which we never talk about, mostly because we always focus on technology, but if you really look at Twitter and Facebook, what they're doing is they're essentially changing user behavior, right? Our expectations of interacting with the web have gone from a single box to a very different kind of an internet, right? That one of the reasons Google became so successful was it changed our behavior from portals and pretty marginal search experience to a very simple, highly effective search experience. So we became addicted to the idea of searching constantly. Now we are slowly getting addicted to the idea of information being surfaced by people who are, our friends or in the social circle or whatever you want to call them, people we loosely know, right? And I think that has to be a big issue for Google. I mean, they have to be worried about that, but I think that is a much more profound shift in the web right now, how people interact with information, not just the technology aspect of it. I don't think from a technology aspect, Google has to worry anything. The only big worry, in my opinion, is how people are beginning to find and consume information.
We're going to move on. Apple's big worldwide developers conference was this week. Steve Jobs took the stage on Monday, did take a few potshots at Google, but the real potshot at Google might have happened in the changed terms of the developer agreement on the iPhone. Apple is now prohibiting developers from using advertising in their application that shares analytic data with an advertising service provider other than Apple. In effect, saying you can use iAds, but you better not use AdMob. Big shot against Google, you think?
I'd say it's a call to the FTC.
It's kind of shocking, and I think that's what Google...
They're already looking at it.
I think it's Google wants, yeah. Let
me play the devil's advocate here. Call to the FTC for a company which has 2.2% of the overall mobile market? I don't buy that. I'm sorry. That's not what... You call the FTC when you're dealing with Microsoft, right? I'm sorry.
Were they? Microsoft?
Microsoft.
A threat? Microsoft? I mean, I agree. In principle, I agree with you.
No. When I say back in the day when Microsoft was a monopoly, that's when you would need...
Because they had 90% of the market or 95%.
Right. So it's just not like they're saying they own the... very soon...
They might, though. Now, you could be proactive on this. They're positioning themselves to own the mobile ad market.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you, I'm telling the FTC to stay the hell out of newspapers, and the FCC likewise. So I don't disagree with you. What I'm saying is that I think it's a funny PR move at this stage in an early market to try. Steve's just gone so wacky in control freakishness.
Is there a justification at all for this besides the obvious business justification? I mean, usually Apple has this nice consumer spin. Well, it's in your interest. Well,
they said that was Steve at D8 or D10 or whatever the hell it is at D was talking about how Flutter had sent data back, and this was a matter of principle because Flutter was thinking they were funny and finding out what devices were being used in the app.
Right. Flurry.
Thank you, Flurry. So I don't know if they.
So Brad, has Google gone to or AdMob gone to the FTC?
Well, I mean, we found out a couple of weeks ago that the FTC was looking at Apple's behavior not only in the mobile phone market but the music market, the digital music market. You know, I don't know. We sort of never know who's complained. I mean, my feeling is they all sort of complain about each other. You know, yeah, the FTC, it seems to me, is looking at it, and you know, Ohm's point about market share is a good one, but it's always about how you kind of define the market, and obviously, the slicer you cut the pie, the more powerful Apple seems.
Right.
Well, here is the thing, guys. Like, has anybody even asked the big question? Like, how much money do you really make from these mobile ads?
Well, interestingly, Apple says they've already, before iAd launches, have $60 million worth of buys.
Yeah, well, you know, we'll see it and we'll believe it. I mean, we have a mobile application, the Giga mobile app, and, you know, I bet you the amount of money we've made from AdMob so far, maybe less than $50. And we've had it out for about a month. This, you know, this mobile advertising model, I think people are not paying attention to the fact that mobile is very different than the web, all right? The web advertising model is entirely different. It is actually pretty inefficient. On the mobile, advertising will have to be very efficient, will have to be generating very high CPM in order for application providers and website developers to actually make decent money. And I think if Apple says you use our application, you know, our ad system, and you'll make more money, well, I'll see. If I make more money, I'll use there. If not, I might just say, you know, to hell with it. We don't need to put any ads in this thing, because after 1 month, if I make $50, it's like, why ruin the experience? So I don't think AdMob is very effective right now. And, you know, I'm sure there are other people who will disagree with me, but I don't buy that that any of these guys have the right answer on mobile advertising. I know it's the wrong, curmudgeonly, you know, backward-looking view to take on things, but I am taking that view.
Well, and Gina, doesn't it just push developers to Android? I mean, in the long run, it could be a negative for Apple. It makes developers say, well, if I can't use any ad platform I choose, maybe I should choose another platform to write for.
Yeah, I mean, I think developers who are focused, like who have dollar signs in their eyes, are probably going to develop for the iPhone. Anyway, yeah. So I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't think that developers are going to feel some sort of allegiance to AdMob, to Google. You know, if you're going to develop for iPhone because you want to make a heck of a lot of money, then I don't think it would be a big deal to you. But I don't know, because I'm not an iPhone developer, and like, I don't, you know.
We're going to move on and talk about, in fact, antitrust against Google in general. I guess everybody's being investigated these days. It's just part of the way business works. We also have a
because government doesn't have time to investigate the bank.
Right. They would prefer you pay no attention to the financial issue.
Yeah, those guys are doing such a great job picking your pocket.
Don't look at the BP oil spill. Don't look at Goldman Sachs.
Let's go after people who actually make things which people want to buy. People who are actually making U.S. competitive in the world market. No, let's not do that. Let's just support all the idiots who are looting us blind. Okay, that's the way it's supposed to go.
You may. I know, Brad, you've got to go in about 5 minutes, so we're gonna do a quick ad, and then we're gonna let you go. But I do want to get your reaction. And actually, you wrote the story, so I'd like to get your thoughts on this. But very quickly, let me just mention our friends at GoToMeeting. The folks at Citrix do the best, the one, the only online meeting software out there. It's the one you should be using. In fact, you can be using absolutely free if you go to gotomeeting.com/twig. TWIG. You could try this absolutely free for 30 days. It'll install in seconds. Now, the next time you're on a conference call, you just tell your conferees, hey, go to gotomeeting.com. Here's the meeting ID. Or you can even email them ahead of time an invitation. Give them a link. Seconds later, they're seeing your computer on their screen. They see your PowerPoint or your keynote presentation, the slides, the spreadsheets, whatever it is that you're trying to work together on for collaboration, for training, for sales, of course. You'll close more deals, you'll get more done, you'll be more efficient with GoToMeeting. We use it so often here, we actually had to get a couple extra accounts because there were simultaneous GoToMeetings going on. It's really a great tool. I highly recommend it. You may have tried the rest. You may have seen how difficult it is to configure or install. You're going to love it. Citrix knows how to do this stuff. GoToMeeting.com/twig. Just remember that. You could try it free for 30 days. So, Brad, you wrote about this a couple of weeks ago. What is the status of the monopoly investigation against Google?
Oh, I think it's quiet now. The main course there for a while was AdMob, and the FTC I think wanted to do something there, if just to challenge Google, but ultimately the shifting market realities and Apple's strength and its own IAD system and acquisition of Quattro Wireless kind of forced its hand. It dropped it. My impression is the Justice Department is always taking every meeting it can, trying to learn more about unified search and the way in which Google, leverages its strength in search to go into other markets. Probably now the focus of attention is the Wi-Fi, Street View data collection. I mean, and Google just stepped in it big time, and we're going to find out, soon what kind of data it collected.
Google says it was a rogue hacker employee that did it.
Hopefully, we'll find out more about that and what they were up to. But my sense in researching that Washington story is that you have antitrust enforcers like Christine Varney at the Justice Department and John Leibowitz at the FTC. That right to Ohm's point, Google is creating great products, creating jobs. But what I think the antitrust regulators have seen again and again in all these markets is that. You got to stop this behavior in its incipiency, or you can't do anything about it down the road. I mean, certainly that was, that's been the lesson in a lot of these markets. So, I mean, it looks at things like mobile advertising, which is nothing, but it's looking for evidence of anti-competitive behavior to try to stop it before, any one company, gets a stranglehold by behaving anti-competitively. I don't know if we'll see any kind of Microsoft style investigation. I mean, the thing about Google is, one, it's got the lesson of Microsoft. So, nobody's sending the kinds of emails that Bill Gates was sending in the 90s. And then it's just a different company with a different culture. But, I mean, I think regular, and then there's just the personal aspect, which is like, if you're an antitrust regulator in Washington, if you're not looking at Google right now, are you relevant? I mean, this is like the big fish, and everybody wants to fry it. So it's got a lot of momentum, and I think we'll continue to hear about it for the next couple of years.
But isn't that attitude kind of scary a little bit? I know I'm a known Google fanboy, but just this attitude that says that when things get too big, I talk about this with Europeans, and I said, where is the law that tells me the definition of too big? Google didn't get there, I don't think, by doing anything evil. Newspapers messed up, and Google offers a better ad deal, and Alta was crappy next to Google, and so on. They just did things better, and at some point, isn't that dangerous for our economy to that you're always going to worry that, I can't be too successful?
Right.
That's so un-American.
Look, I think the AdMob example is a great one. The FTC looked at the deal. They spent a lot of time looking at it and probably devoted a lot of resources, but they approved it, and maybe that was the right call. And so, that they're checking, the corporate power, I think, has to be a good thing. And then hopefully, they'll continue to sort of behave and act with, all due consideration. But, it doesn't worry me that this is a company that obviously has a lot of power, a lot of market power, control over the information that we see online, and that someone's watching.
So do newspapers.
I think there is one point to make in this, which is, if you really think about it, we as a society have come to a point where being successful, you get penalized. Doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a sports star, you're a film actor, you're a big company, you are going to get torn down at some point or the other, because that has become the favorite spectator sport of the times. I think that is just universal. And the second part of it, if FTC and people in the Congress and other government institutions are going to look into technology industry, well, they need to get educated about technology industry. They cannot be watchdogs by being marginally, intelligent about these things. If we want people to be smart about these things and make smart decisions to regulate the technology industry or whatsoever, we need people who actually get it, people who are smart about it, people who are from the industry or actually are educated in things which are actually relevant to the industry. I think this is where the big issues are not talked about is that we always are dealing with situations in a reactive manner, whether it's the FTC investigation of AdMob or whatever. Instead of taking 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, that should have taken exactly 2 weeks if we had the right people in place, right? Right people in place would have meant they would be aware of the industry dynamics. And I think it shouldn't take 5 months. It shouldn't cost taxpayers that much money. I think this is where I think the system is not working properly, in my opinion.
Okay. I think we can move on. There goes Brad. Boom.
Wow.
He took off. But I think you said it, and I think that's absolutely accurate. And an investigation does not a indictment make, or court case make. Let's see, real quickly.
So, Leo, you were going to ask, are you buying?
I guess.
Well, of course, you're buying everything.
I guess we should talk about the iPhone.
Would you switch?
Yeah, I might.
Really?
You know, what happened was I had the Evo, as you know, for a while. I really love it. And Gina, you still have your Evo, right? Because you got it. I was just a review copy. I just sent it back. And I was trying to decide whether. There she is. She's fondling it. I was trying to decide whether to get it. And my experience was that the battery life is probably just not good enough to keep. I like the screen a lot, but it's just I need to keep pumping it up. I love my Nexus 1, and that was the other problem, was I really like 2.2. I want Froyo.
Froyo, yep. So GSM, Froyo, and the battery life, right?
Yep.
Those are the 3 problems with the Evo, for sure.
Now, I still have battery life with the Nexus 1, but it's not as bad.
It's not as bad. Right.
So I think I'll keep the Nexus 1, but gosh darn it, that screen on the iPhone. Jeff, that's got to make you kind of drooly.
Really? Yeah.
The Retina display looks amazing.
Yeah,
right?
that's to me the only thing. I don't care about the front-facing camera. We had that on the Evo. Who are you going to call?
Well, I think the front-facing camera is going to make chat roulette all the easier.
It's for sex, let's face it. And besides, you have to be in. Okay, you can disavow all knowledge of my actions. You have to be in Wi-Fi, which, you know,
that's a really problematic limitation right now.
My greatest disappointment, I was counting on, Steve saying, and now we're opening it up to all carriers. One more thing, you can get it on any carrier, anything intelligent.
I haven't. So the screen is your killer reason to drop Android and go back to iPhone?
Yeah, because if you want OS 4, you got it on 3GS. So you got multitasking, you've got folders. Front-facing camera doesn't wow me.
So I'm confused, Leo. I thought you said that you were going to go back to the iPhone.
I'm thinking about it because of the screen.
Just the screen.
Just the screen is the only thing that wows me enough.
I see you nodding your head, Gina.
No, I can understand the logic. The Retina display looks really beautiful. I'm not
I have
to
buy it. I have to buy it. I mean, anyway. So I'll buy it, review it. The question is, what will I carry in my pocket?
Right. I'm curious to know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know.
You are fickle as can be when it comes to devices.
He's a BlackBerry man.
BlackBerry, let's talk about the BlackBerry a little bit, and let's talk about the WWDC keynote, because Jobs, the BlackBerry is the device that's ahead of the iPhone, right? But Jobs didn't really talk about RIM, right? He talked about Android specifically.
He didn't talk about Microsoft's Windows Phone 7 either.
Right. So it was like he mentioned Android by name twice, even though Android is not the iPhone's biggest competition, right? RIM is ahead of the iPhone, and then there's the iPhone, and then there's Android, right?
I think
Android is only behind the iPhone in browser usage. But I thought it was really interesting. I found him kind of defensive, and I thought it was interesting that he pointed out Android.
It's so interesting because we, of course, Google took a few hits. Vic took a few hits for slamming Apple, and that shows a weakness. And why are you mentioning a competitor in your keynote? And then Steve does the same thing back.
Yeah,
they're clearly in this headbutting war, right?
Yeah, there is. They are, and if you look at the numbers, Jobs has no reason to discuss Android. I mean, I think that he was looking at a crowd of developers, a crowd of early adopters, a crowd of people who are going to be.
That's who he's talking to. He's talking.
Yeah, Gina, I think you're right. But they're not in the phone business; they're in the ad business.
Well, they showed that, didn't they?
I mean, yes, Apple is still the device business, but where the money is going to be the advertising.
And that's what Google.
I don't buy that for a minute. I think there is a couple of things, right? So first of all, I don't think anyone should discount RIM at any point in time. And I think Apple isn't discounting them, because if you really look at their sales, they keep going. At least for near foreseeable future, RIM will keep gaining market share or start selling, keep selling their devices because they are selling cheaper smartphones in the rest of the world. Well, secondly, I think the big issue with Apple and Android is two different ideologies. I think if you really think about it, one ideology is Apple's ideology, which is a device, a very curated, controlled experience, which is proven to be moneymaker for developers. And then there is the Google experience, which is a little bit, more free form, all over the place, advertising-centric revenue model. So the developers will soon enough make a choice which way they want to go, because there will be more Android devices on the planet. Just the sheer number of people making handsets using Android will make sure that there is more Android phones on the planet. As a developer, you will have to make a choice whether you want to go where the revenues are, which is by selling apps, and people are used to paying for certain things. And then the ad business, which is where Google is focusing on and trying to make money that way. I think we are going to see this schism develop over the next couple of years. And I agree with you. I think this whole Apple versus Android is a bit of a fight which shouldn't exist, because the two of them are trying to eat Nokias for lunch, essentially. I mean, if there is anybody they should be taking digs at, it is at Nokia, not at each other, because the two of them are too small to be taking digs at each other, in my opinion.
Well, I think Nokia is in such a bad shape. I've said this to people there and said it again today to somebody. I think they should come out with Android phones.
Well, maybe not. I think, I'm pretty happy with my BlackBerry. I have to be very honest with you. It doesn't run out of battery in the middle of a conversation, so...
Yeah, that's kind of an issue. And Joshua Topolsky from Engadget said an interesting thing on TWiT this week. Are you on, which network are you on, Om? Are you on AT&T with your BlackBerry?
No, I use T-Mobile.
T-Mobile.
And they have this thing called UMA, which basically, if you're on Wi-Fi anywhere on the planet, it seems like you're making local phone calls.
Yeah, boy, I've found that quality is terrible, though, on that. You're okay with that?
Yeah, it works for me. Like, I've been using it for almost a year now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had the UMA for a while too.
I would love to own an iPhone, like on a permanent basis, but there is one three-letter word which starts with an A, which completely drives me insane. So,
three-letter word. This is like crossword puzzles. A three-letter word. Oh, them.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw my post about a year and a half ago. I was the first one to break up with the iPhone because of AT&T.
Yeah, well, you were probably right, AT&T. But Joshua was saying, and this is what I'm curious about, is do you get dropped calls on anything but the iPhone? Maybe it's the iPhone, in which case maybe this new design which puts the antenna on
my 3G AT&T card right before I came on the air,
looked good.
Then after I came on the air, it was dropping like crazy.
Oh, but you're driving. You were driving.
That's what it's meant for.
Not while you're driving 60 miles an hour.
Sure, it's meant to be able to work for me in the Acela train driving at 120 miles an hour.
Really? This is really fun. The funny part of this whole conversation is that AT&T data network is the one which is choked, right?
Right. Because of the iPhone.
Which is like a voice channel shouldn't be dropping calls. So, there's clearly some issues there, right? Like, so
let me ask you a question. Yeah. If you created a data-only network, no voice, would it be more efficient?
No. It all depends on two things, Jeff. To have a really strong data network which AT&T can support, the iPhone, which can support millions of iPhone users, you need to have a lot of spectrum, you need to have a lot of backhaul bandwidth, and you need to have a lot of radios in a lot of places, the tower radios in a lot of places in a city. You cannot just expect to have a great network which is not fully architected for an iPhone user, right? Like, essentially.
I'm asking the next question. So if you were going to build a network now, if you're Sprint building this network, wouldn't they be better off building a pure data network and going ahead and declaring defeat and making voice VoIP?
Well, that's exactly what LTE is supposed to do, and that's exactly what WiMAX is supposed to do.
Oh, interesting.
So if you really look at the WiMAX networks we have right now, they're a little slow, but they are built for an IP world, and same is with LTE. So when that happens, then it will become the question of how the carriers want to charge you. I think that's the reason why they all went from flat rate to these smaller tiers, because as LTE comes out, it would become less profitable for them to offer you flat rate data. So they will offer you data, but the more calls you make, the more video calls you make, or more voice calls you make, you will still have to pay for them. So this will be like their way of continuing the phone companies for a way for them to keep making money. And I think which is fine, right? Like if you really think about it, that's the only way they can, put money into the network, is just getting some kind of data revenue. So you will see that. Like that'd be fun. But it's still a little bit ways off, another 2 years before we see some of that stuff happen. But what phones do you guys use? I didn't really.
Well, we're all Nexus 1 users because we really strong-armed Jeff to give up his iPhone, and now he's going to gloat when I switch back to the iPhone. Or maybe cry, I don't know.
Jeff, you have an iPhone?
I have both, but I'm using the Nexus 1, except when I was in Europe, when I was in South Africa, it wasn't worth it to get a SIM down there. However, I pay $100 a month to use AT&T outside the U.S., so I can have 100 megs and be safe.
Right.
I hit South Africa. Sorry, not involved. $10 a meg.
Oh, yeah. There's some Asian nations, too, where that international data plan doesn't work.
No.
It's a little frustrating.
What about Gina? What phone do you use on a daily basis?
I use the Nexus 1, which I bought myself. I got an Evo at Google I/O, but I am trying not to get too hooked on it because I'm going to have an early termination fee with my T-Mobile contract, because I have a T-Mobile contract.
Yeah, you get 30 days of use of the Evo, so you have a decision to make in a couple of weeks.
Do I switch to Sprint or not?
Right.
Which I probably won't. If 4G was here in San Diego and the Evo was Android 2.2, I would switch, but not quite yet.
And it might be Android 2.2 by then. We don't know. I mean, they keep making sounds like they're going to do this. But
I think actually you do have 4G in San Diego, Gina, because Qualcomm has their headquarters.
That's true. Qualcomm is here.
If you're next to Qualcomm, it works great.
Yeah.
No, like if you're in like 2 miles radius from their office, you can actually get 4G. You can pick it up.
It's funny. There's some places in Silicon Valley, too, where 4G works.
4G works perfectly. Yeah. Google Campus,
exactly.
Cisco.
That's it. I'm going to park my RV down there, and I'm going to just hook up all my computers. It's going to be my internet access. That's it. I'm going to do TWiT from the RV by Qualcomm next time.
I'm sure they will find a way to get you the bandwidth. Trust me.
This world is going to change, though. Next year, with LTE and wider Sprint Clearwire, everything changes quite a bit, doesn't it? But maybe not if we're only getting 2 gigabytes a month.
You
have to pay for more bandwidth. That's all.
Yeah.
My issue remains that we're just going to be nervous. And it's going to put a stranglehold on use, which is going to put a stranglehold on development, which is going to put a stranglehold on the business model of mobile, just as it's ready to take off.
Well, that's exactly what we've been writing about. I hope people do pay attention to this whole issue more seriously. I think this is a really, really serious issue for our industry. This whole bandwidth cap.
I agree.
I
have to say I'm a little sympathetic because the infrastructure for mobile data is very different than the infrastructure for your internet service provider for your house and business.
Well, that's why I'm asking about voice versus data.
That's interesting. Yeah. They're
trying to protect the old models, and if you disrupt it entirely, and the problem is it takes too much capital to disrupt this industry. But if you did, if white spaces really existed with Wi-Fi on steroids, you'd build it around data purely. And I wonder whether the whole voice structure and the whole effort to maintain that business model causes problems. I'd be a lot more willing to pay more for data every month if I didn't have to pay for the voice. And there's no reason I shouldn't be able to do that.
And by the way, if you're paying through the nose for data, how long before you put ad blockers on all these iAds and ad mobs and all of that stuff? Because that's just using up more data.
That's true, too.
This is kind of against their business model in some ways. According to Mashable Mobile, there's a hack that allows 720p video recording on the Nexus 1. So maybe Gina and I don't have to move. Oh, yeah.
I haven't tried this.
Yeah, I have to try it. You've rooted your handset, I'm sure, right?
Like how much
I have rooted past handsets. I decided to try and go non-root with the Nexus One because that's how most normal people
You have
don't
to use
root their phone.
You have to use a cyanogen ROM to do this, and Froyo is not supported. So I don't know if it's really a real, but it's interesting. But the point is that there's a lot of hardware that is not currently taken advantage of by the operating system.
Right.
Leo, I apologize. I've got a dash.
Jeff,
Jake's getting
thank
some
you.
kind of award tonight. But I'm glad I could make it on, even from a moving car.
We are thrilled to have you, as always, Jeff Jarvis, the blogger at buzzmachine.com, the author of What Would Google Do, professor of journalism at
Good
CUNY.
to see you and Gina, and a pleasure to see you, my friend.
Great to have you, Jeff. Take care. And we already got your number, so goodbye. In fact, if you want to take off too, we're just going to wrap this thing up. So go ahead. Just everybody else is left.
I know, they're dropping like flies.
It's just going to be me and Gina.
That's fine with me.
I don't want to be rude. I just want to make sure I do my job and then go.
My secret plan is coming true. I just go ahead, leave. No. Gina, it's time for your tip of the week.
Tip of the week. This is a good one. I like this one. New Gmail Labs feature, Google Maps previews. So if you go into your Gmail Labs settings and you enable this, it's just called Google Maps previews. Someone emails you an address. It embeds a Google map right inside the message. You can expand it. You can open it in a new window. Super, super handy. Gmail's really, really getting really good at this now, like the embedding content. Someone sends you a YouTube video, you can see you can get the embed with the play button. Flickr pictures, it does the same thing, which is nice because they're Yahoo's their competitor. So now we have maps, and this is pretty sweet. And actually, I think this works in Buzz as well. Ooh. Although I haven't tried it. Leo, you probably know. If you buzz an address, I think you get automatically a Google Map
so cool.
Embedded.
Do I have to turn it on in the Labs setting for Gmail to get that happening in Buzz? Okay, so let me turn it on
and then click
now.
Enable, and then scroll down and hit the Save Changes button.
Yep.
And then if you search for a mail or an email, if you get an email with an address in it, it'll just automatically embed a map. So, it's just one of these little things that you're going to turn on and forget about it. And then you're going to get an email with an address, and instead of having to flip to a new tab and look it up at Google Maps, it'll be right there for you.
Isn't that nice? That's awesome.
I love Gmail Labs.
I do too. And it's good to thank you for letting us know because they add stuff all the time.
They do.
I'm stealing one that really, by all rights, should have been yours. And not only am I stealing it from you, but I'm stealing it from GigaOM. Matthew Ingram writing yesterday on GigaOM. Google tries to get some buzz for Wave with Wave This. Did you know about this, Gina?
Yes, I did. It's a bookmarklet.
It's a bookmarklet. How cool! So if you go to the Google blog, and I'm just going to click the link here, you can create a new wave from any web page, which is very cool. And there's a Wave This API, so you can also put a Wave This button on your web page. So now that everybody is and actually it's just it's actually pretty easy. It's just add this link. And anything can be a wave. So now that everybody can use Wave because the invitations are open, maybe we'll see more waves. Do you see more interest in Wave now? I mean, Gina, you wrote the book. I'm calling her Google from now on.
That's right.
I am seeing some more interest. Our sales went up, which was nice. Definitely, but still getting that feeling that you really have to kind of bring somebody in and show them, and then they're like, "This is cool."
Yeah.
So Wave still kind of has that little bit of a learning curve problem, but the people who I have used it with really like it, and we did see a little spike in sales after they opened it up, which I was pleased about. And thank you to everyone who's listening.
Are you using Wave at all, in your business, or?
No, I'm not. The rest of my team does.
They do.
Yeah, I like Twitter, so unfortunately I just spend most of my time on Twitter.
I like Twitter. Isn't it funny? Twitter's now the old fart thing. Oh, you're so old. You use Twitter. Oh, man.
You're old, man. I'm not. Sorry.
Oh, I use Buzz. It's modern.
Yeah, it's the reverse psychology. Only the old people use the latest technology, right? Like Facebook, like that. No, but I have one tip for you guys, both you and Gina.
Love it.
So you like Android. So soon Samsung is going to introduce a new phone called Samsung Galaxy.
The Galaxy. I can't wait to see it. Have you seen it?
You will be so pleasantly surprised, and it will be like your Nexus One will look like a Yugo compared to that.
Well, it's a huge screen. It's an AMOLED screen, right?
Beautiful. I just saw it like in Europe before coming. It is unbelievably beautiful, and it doesn't look like an Android phone. It is as close to an iPhone as any Android device has come. It's pretty amazing, and I think you guys want to buy that whenever you have an opportunity.
The current rumors are that T-Mobile will have it in July. I hope that's the case.
I hope
man.
so.
See, now we got a tough decision.
Android phone. Every month there's a new phone. Ugh, it's tough being an Android user.
It's really
exactly. No point buying shoes now. Just buy the phone.
It's a new phone every 3 months, whether you want one or not.
What do you mean every 3 months? It should be every 15 days.
It really feels like every 6 weeks. I feel like someone needs to chart this on a timeline.
It's ridiculous.
It's true.
I'll do it for you, Gina. But guys, I really do have to bail out. Thank you.
We're done. Malik, thanks so much for joining us. GigaOM, GIGAOM.com is the place to go to read Ohm and his incredible staff. Are you doing, now you did a show on Rev 3. Are you going to go back to that at any point?
We're doing some stuff on our own site. We're not going back to Rev 3. Gina, you can always have me back whenever. I
want you back, Malik.
I love what you do, and it's an honor to be in the presence of you and Gina. Both of you I admire a lot, so thank you for having me in your company.
Thank you, Om. Really appreciate it. Good to talk to you again. Take care.
Take care, guys.
And Gina Trapani, of course, she is the blogger at smarterware.org, and her book, The Complete Guide to Google Wave, is at completewaveguide.com.
Yes, it is. If you buy a copy, put in the discount code TWIG, and you'll get a little surprise. Yeah, for TWIG listeners.
Aren't you
Just for you, because I love you.
Isn't that sweet? Well, everybody loves Gina. So thank you, Gina, for being here. It's great to see you again, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. We do this show now on Wednesday afternoon, if you didn't know, and we'd love to have you live in the chat room. And it's always great to have that kind of feedback as we go. I get lots of great stuff from the chat room. Just head to live.twit.tv at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday afternoon. Chat room is irc.twit.tv, and we will see you next time on This Week in Google. Bye-bye.